for every 250,000 insane posts, there's a good one out there, right? Something that, if not educational, at least thought-provoking. So I was perusing socials and I see this post. And I thought, interesting question. And that question was very simple. And I don't know if you guys caught this, but I did post a video today. My second in the quarterback conundrum series. This one was centered around Justin Fields and the decision that the Chicago Bears have to make at number 1 overall. And so the question that was posed on socials was simple. If the Bears offered Justin Fields to the Washington Commanders for a 3rd round selection, would you do it? I know how I feel, but I want to know how you feel, and I don't want to influence how you feel. So I'm just going to ask you the question, and you can leave it down in the comment section and we can discuss. But if the Bears said, we're going to spend the number 1 overall pick on Caleb Williams, and that was the player Washington was targeting, and they don't want any of the other quarterbacks, but they know they have to do something, which I don't know if you have to do anything. If you don't select one of those quarterbacks, you could get another one of the other guys later on in the draft. There's going to be a slew of quarterbacks available. I would be interested to see what would happen if they didn't take a quarterback, as to what they would do in the coming rounds. After that, would they look to get a quarterback in the 2nd or the 3rd or whatever? But if the Bears are trading Justin Fields, they're going to do it prior to the draft, right? They're not going to wait until after the draft. It'll either happen prior to the draft or it'll happen during the draft. But they're going to get that draft capital ASAP. They're not going to have that be a 3rd rounder next year, right? So they know where our 3rd rounders will be by the time next week rolls around. They'll know exactly where our 2 3rd rounders are. We have a compensatory pick from the 49ers, and we have our 3rd round pick. And let's say of the 2, they want ours, the higher of the 2. Would you be interested in trading a 3rd round pick for Justin Fields, who is going into year 4? All right, this will be year 4 next year. And you'd have to make a decision this offseason on whether you're going to pick up the 5th-year option or not. So that's something that I would assume if you're trading for Fields, similar to all the teams that made trades a couple of years back when we saw the Panthers trade for Sam Darnold and et cetera, et cetera. We saw like 2 or 3 teams trade for guys with, 5th-year options on the table. You have to pick up the 5th-year option. If you're going to trade for a guy going into year 4 and you want to find out if this guy can play or not, you have to pick up the 5th-year option. It's costly, right? It's costly. Depending on where that player was selected, it's costly, but it's the cost of doing business if you're going to try to kick the tires on a former 1st-round pick. Would you be interested in a 3rd-round pick for Justin Fields? That would allow you to spend your 1st-round pick on whatever you like. You can spend it on whatever you like. Yeah. So that could be a tackle. That could be a receiver. Whatever. Right? Leave it in the comment section. I won't hold you there too long. And I've told you guys this already. And let me just add to the conversation real quick. So I've been adamant about Ian Cunningham. That's my choice for GM. And I think that's the guy that ultimately is going to get this job, right? And I've been pretty I think I've been pretty consistent with that messaging since I introduced him to you guys as he was introduced to me. So I think he's going to ultimately be the GM, okay? Because his strength is the opposite of Eugene Shin's strength. Part of the reason Eugene Shin is here is because he's the analytical, data-based guy, right? He's the guy that makes things make sense from a numbers standpoint. I think to balance out the group, you want someone with more practical, hands-on experience. That's where Ian Cunningham comes in to play. Former player, been groomed under guys that have an old school mentality, guys that are kind of boots on the ground, old school talent evaluators. That offers you the balance that you're looking for in the front office. I think that's the approach that they're going to take, which is why I think Ian Cunningham's going to be their guy. He's young. He's been in some of the best organizations in football. We've done this already. We'll do it again, right? I'm going to go through all the GM candidates. We're going to go through them extensively. Cunningham will be one of them. So we'll do this again. But the reason I brought up the Justin Fields question at the top of the show is because I'm thinking about what happened with the Detroit Lions. Because we're going to get our GM from somewhere, right? He's going to come from some team. He's not coming from the USFL, okay? We're not pulling him from the collegiate ranks. He's not going to be someone's AD. He's coming from someone's front office in the NFL. Similar to the Lions situation, Brad Holmes came from the L.A. Rams. And when he got to Detroit, the first thing he did was he reached back and he grabbed Jared Goff. The same thing could happen here, where Ian Cunningham could come from Chicago. He already knows what Ryan Poles is thinking, all right? He spent the last 2 years with GM Ryan Poles in Chicago. He knows how he feels about Fields. And he may say, hey, I believe in that kid. He could leave Chicago, come to Washington, and the first thing he might do is double back and grab Justin Fields. And if all it's going to cost you is a third-round pick, that might be the direction that he decides to go in. Again, as a GM, when you spend a first-round pick on a quarterback, you start your clock as a GM, essentially. Because if that, you are better off hiring a coach that doesn't work than drafting a quarterback that doesn't work. People will overlook a bad hire at head coach. I told you Nick Caserio, the Texans GM, hired 3 different coaches in 3 different years, his first 3 years in Houston. People will overlook that. F up the quarterback position, though, one time. Off with his head. It's the reason that we haven't seen the Indianapolis Colts until this year draft a quarterback. Their GM, Chris Ballard, said, the minute I draft a quarterback, I start my clock. So he kept going out and getting veterans. Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, because he was trying to avoid having his clock start. So understand that when this new GM comes in here, the first thing he might do, depending on who he is and what his philosophical beliefs are, but the first thing he may do is say, nah, I think I'm going to reach back and grab my guy. Not spending a first-round pick on a quarterback so you guys can fillet me if it doesn't work. Just a thought. Again, that doesn't have to necessarily be the way that this guy comes in and thinks, or the way that this woman comes in here and thinks, whomever the person is. Anyway, I digress.
LouieTeeNetwork.